Before I start this video, if you've not subscribed to my channel, I'd appreciate it if you could hit that subscribe button. If you like the video, please click the like button, share this out through social media, and leave comments in the comments section. Today, I'm going to be reviewing episode 3 of A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, The Squire. This is an egg-centric episode. It definitely is revolving around egg, and we'll get a reveal at the end of the episode. So it starts off with Duncan being asleep. It looks like it's very early in the morning. The sun has not come up. Egg, however, is awake. He goes and he feeds Thunder, the new jousting horse, and then takes him out to an open area and teaches him how to be a jousting horse. He has a long conversation with him, telling Thunder that his father told him not to talk to horses, even though he's not listening to his father, obviously, and that horses weren't as smart as dogs, and they only understood the crop. They definitely give Thunder some personification. He acts like he's understanding Egg the whole time. Several times he nods. He does other things. And Egg also tells him that we're all that Sir Duncan has. And if Sir Duncan loses, well, he won't even have that. So I guess they kind of make a pact. At first, Thunder isn't very enthusiastic about running, but Egg eventually fires him up and gets him up to speed. When Egg is brushing him off after they've worked out for a while, a man comes up behind him, asks Egg if he stole the horse. Egg basically replies, "It's not stealing if you're planning on bringing it back." The gentleman asks him, "Well, what happened to your hair?" And Egg replies, "Well, what happened to your eye?" And we get this flashback of a knight jousting and getting hit in the helmet, and the shards of the lance going through the visor and basically taking out the knight's eye. And we find out that this is Sir Robin Weasley, who is the maddest king in the Seven Kingdoms. And Egg basically tells him that, to which Sir Robin replies, "He is a vessel for the warrior. When it is madness bid, it is madness delivered." And Sir Robin basically tells Egg that he's awful small for a squire, which is a callback to last episode when Egg was asking Duncan's advice about what to do when people call him small. And Egg basically replies, "Well, I'm the squire to Sir Duncan the Tall. He's big enough for both of us." So Robin says, "Well, I've never heard of him." And actually, it's we. I forgot. Apparently, Sir Robin's pronouns are we. Actually, no, he's just really mental. And so after that exchange, Egg takes Thunder back and finds Sir Duncan basically patching his shirt. Egg says, "Well, shouldn't I be doing that?" Duncan says, "Well, do you know how?" And Egg kind of goes, eh. And Duncan tells him then to shut up and basically brush down the horse. Apparently, what Egg was doing before wasn't good enough. It's obvious that Sir Duncan is trying to be Sir Arlen, except he doesn't have the personality for it. He's a good person. So he quickly relents. He teaches Egg how to sew. And then together they brush down Thunder. A little later, Egg is up in a tree singing about The Targaryens, I'm not going to go into the whole song. Um, and you can hear Sir Duncan in the background vomiting. He finally comes around and he says, "It's time, get my armor." And Egg's basically like, "Why?" And Sir Duncan goes, "Well, so I can join the lists." And Egg basically informs him, "Well, first, you don't have your shield." And Sir Duncan goes, "Well, we'll pick it up on the way, even though I don't think it's ready yet, because didn't Tanzel promise it'd be ready the following evening?" I seem to recall that. And the second and more grievous issue that Egg informs Duncan of, and I don't know why he didn't know this because he's been a squire forever, is that on the first day of the tournament, you have to be highborn or of notoriety to joust. And since he's not highborn and he's not renowned, he's not jousting today. And of course, that brings up another problem because remember, in the last episode, he only rented the armor from Steely Pete for one day. So he's going to have to come up with another couple of stags. I guess it could be from the money that he got for the White Horse last episode. But he's definitely going to have to pay another day's rent on his armor. So they kind of jump forward a little and in the they're in the jousting area or whatever you want to call it, the pavilion or whatever it is. And so Duncan is trying to get a couple of goose eggs, and the poultry person thinks he just wants the goose, and he keeps trying to cut its head off. And Duncan keeps telling no, and he does this silly little dance like he's trying to show that a goose is laying an egg. And finally, he gets his two eggs, and Tanzel shows up, and Duncan asks her if she likes eggs, and her reply is basically, "Your shield will be ready in the evening." So that's basically where we're at with that. So he couldn't have jousted today anyway because he wouldn't have had a shield. Then they go back to camp. They crack the eggs. It looks like they had like pork belly. I hope it ain't that salted beef because if you're cooking salted beef, that's just going to be disgusting. Anyway, so maybe it's pork belly and eggs and some bread. And it actually looked like a really good breakfast sandwich, I'm telling you. And then we get like another little callback. If you remember the last episode when Sir Duncan was talking about Sir Arlen's life, they show at one point they're like sharing food under a tree, and that's what Egg and Duncan are doing, is that they're sitting under a tree and sharing a meal. After that, they go down and they watch the first joust. Um, I didn't recognize any of the sigils, and they didn't like announce who any of these people were, so I'm gonna say that they're not significant to the plot, or they would have mentioned who they were. One guy does end up knocking the other guy off his horse when he's sitting there trying to get his lance. I don't know if that was very chivalrous, but that's the way it goes. Also, Duncan gets some pretty foul hooch from one of the peasants that was watching and basically takes a little swig and spits it out. I thought that was kind of funny. Next scene is they're overlooking the pavilion area and they're kind of having like a fantasy. Egg says that this would be a great place to like be, and Duncan says, "Well, you're here now. You are here now." And Egg said, "Well, I'm kind of meant for like the future." And they go through this whole thing where like Egg comes back from a war and he's honored himself and he gets some land and he gets the second most beautiful girl in the area because Sir Duncan got the first one. And then he talks about, raising crops, raising animals, and Duncan says, "What about lambs?" And Egg tells him, "Fuck the lambs." And again, that's a callback to remember at the end of the first episode, Egg got to Ashford Meadows in a lamb cart, and Duncan asks him if he wants to talk about it, and Egg does not. At that point, the master of the games appears, calls Sir Duncan down. They take a little walk along the river, and basically, the master of games has a proposition for him. I assume this is coming from Lord Ashford, that Lord Ashford's son is willing to throw a joust and give up his armor, his horse, and his weapon. And in exchange, Sir Ashford would place a large bet on Sir Duncan. So they're kind of rigging a joust. Sir Duncan says no. That was the correct response, even though it's kind of a little bit of a quandary. I mean, it was the right answer for him because he's an honorable person, but it's going to cause some problems. And the Master Games really doesn't say, I'm accepting that. He basically says, well, I'm going to talk to you in the morning and hopefully you'll change your mind. Yeah, it's kind of a predicament, in my opinion. It would definitely be a predicament because I don't know where else you go from here as far as the joust goes, because Sir Andro could challenge him tomorrow, and then he's stuck. So, yeah, it's a bit of a moral quandary. After that, another joust is happening. It's Prince Arion, who reminds me a lot of Viserys from Game of Thrones. He even calls himself the dragon when he calls out Sir Humphrey Harding. That's who he's going to joust first. He kind of teases his cousin Valar first. Looks like he's going to challenge him, but he says, "Don't worry, cousin, I'm not going to humiliate you today." And then he calls Sir Humphrey Little Knight. The first pass, Prince Arion does something very unchivalrous. At the last second, he pulls away, and Sir Humphrey almost falls off, overreaching his lance. He almost falls off his horse. And on the second pass, things get a lot worse. Sir Arion aims his lance and hits Sir Humphrey's horse in the throat. And Sir Duncan realized it right before it happened. He says his lance is too low. That is even more disgusting. And if he was anyone but a prince, I think that would have been it for him. And maybe even Lord Ashford would have penalized him extremely bad. I mean, it's just bad conduct all the way around. And to make matters worse, the horse falls before Sir Humphrey can get out of the way, and it basically crushes his leg. So that causes the crowd to riot, and Egg wants to leave. Sir Duncan agrees right before one of Sir Humphrey's squires or assistants comes up and basically takes a halberd to the horse to finish it off. Very depressing scene there. It does symbolize how dangerous jousting was. I mean, they would never do that in reality. A knight would never do that. Their code would not allow them to do something like that. But falling and everything else, that is accurate. If a horse falls on you, you're going to be crushed. Um, and jousting was dangerous. If you fell off your steed, you're wearing like 50 pounds of armor, you land on your head or something like that, you could snap your neck. A lot of kings would not let their firstborns joust out of fear of losing their firstborn. And it's even been recorded that some kings died in jousts. So it was no joke. I mean, that's why only knights did this. You didn't have regular people doing this because it was dangerous. You needed skills. Um, and even with those skills, accidents happened. People died, people were maimed, all sorts of stuff. So, like I said, I'm enjoying the realisticness of it as it's being portrayed. Um, they Egg and Sir Duncan end up in a tent with Sir Lionel, and he is singing about Alice. And Alice is kind of an interesting woman. Let's say she gives three finger proctology exams to men for a living, and she's a cripple. And Egg and Sir Duncan have a long discussion about Alice while the song is being sung. Was that her real name? Uh, you know, she was making the best of her life, and even is it really a song of hope that even though she's a cripple, she's making the best of it as she can, which is kind of really weird, but okay. Um, they leave Sir Lionel's tent, and um, Duncan asks Egg if he knew his father, and Egg says, well, not really. And Sir Duncan says, well, I knew mine. He got accused of being a thief in Flea Bottom by some cook who didn't like him, and he ended up getting hanged. After that, they pass Lord Ashford and the master of the games, and Duncan and the master of games kind of lock eyes for a second, then they walk away, and then they run into a fortune teller. And she asks if I can tell your fortunes, and Sir Duncan says, yeah, I do mine. And she basically tells him, you're going to be a great success, I'm paraphrasing here, and you're going to be richer than a Lannister. And Sir Duncan says, well, do the boy. And she says, you're going to be king, and then you're going to die in a hot fire, and worms are going to feed on your ashes, and everyone that's known you is going to rejoice. And right here, we're going to get into spoilers for a second, so we're going to count this down. It's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. All of what the fortune teller said is true. Sir Duncan does become a knight of great renown. He wins a lot of tournaments. He makes a lot of money. Egg, as I already stated earlier, is Aegon the Fifth. He becomes king of Westeros. How he dies is they use that Greek fire thing that we saw during Game of Thrones, and he tries to hatch some dragon eggs with it. He becomes rather obsessed with bringing dragons back later in life. So he basically gets some of this dragon fire, tries to use it on the eggs. It gets out of control and basically burns everyone, including Sir Duncan. So Sir Duncan and Aegon the Fifth die together, and kind of a really sad end to their lives together, which spanned a very long time. And there we are. There's the end of spoilers. Right after they are done speaking to the fortune teller, um, they run into Raymond Fossaway, who invites them to his tent for some cider. Egg says, well, no, I'm going to go see the puppet show because I like the puppet show. And when it's done, I'll grab Sir Duncan's shield. And Sir Duncan accepts the invitation, and him and Raymond Fossaway start talking. Raymond asks Sir Duncan if he's chosen an opponent for tomorrow. Duncan has not. He asks if Stefan Fossaway has chosen an opponent, and basically Raymond says, well, if anybody's injured tomorrow, then you can bet that Stefan will be banging on his shield. So basically, Stefan's looking to vulture someone. And at this point, again, showing that maybe Duncan's contemplating it, he mentions Sir Andro and says it seems like they'd be a pretty fair match. And Raymond goes, oh, so the local hero, so you're going to play the role of the villain. And then they get discussing about the Targaryens. I believe Raymond basically calls them inbred aliens. He doesn't think very highly of them. He says Draeon's basically a sot. He's an alcoholic. And Aerion is basically a horrible person when his father isn't around. Aemon, who's the third son, even though they don't call him that, is off being a maester. And about the time he's going to get to the fourth son, Egg comes crashing in, tells Duncan he has to come. He's hurting her. And what I failed to mention is that while this was going on, Egg was watching the puppet show, and about the time Tanzel slays the dragon, because she's not narrating this time, she's actually playing the knight, Aerion comes in and sees this happen, and he's not too thrilled, and all the crowd goes silent instead of cheering that the dragon's been slayed. They're all silent because they know what's about to happen. As Duncan comes running in there, Aerion has Tanzel. It looks like he breaks her middle finger and says, wait, he doesn't say anything. Duncan comes up and basically thrashes him until he's restrained by Aerion's guards. Aerion says, was it worth it to die for a whore? Because you basically strike a prince, that's like a death sentence. And he calls Tanzel a traitor, which is kind of the truth, because the way the Targaryens looked at it is even though the dragons were gone, killing a dragon was paramount to killing a Targaryen. So even if it's in a play, basically it's saying you want to kill the Targaryens. And Aerion is basically really pissed off about it. And he tells Sir Duncan, well, you loosened one of my teeth, so I'm going to knock out all yours. They put Sir Duncan's head on the edge of the stage, and it looks like Aerion's about to curb stop him when Egg comes in and tells him to stop. And Duncan tells Egg to be quiet or they're going to kill him too or hurt him. And Egg goes, I don't think they will, because if they do, they'll have to deal with my father. And Arian calls him, what did he call him? A little rat, but he used a, I'm forgetting the adjective, but he basically calls him a little rat. And Egg basically calls the two guards holding Sir Duncan down by name and tell him to release him. And Arian goes, what happened to your hair? And Egg replies, I didn't want to look like you. I shaved it off because I didn't want to look like you, brother. And there's some dramatic music, and everyone's looking around. I kind of compare it to like when you find out someone's dead in a murder mystery. Everybody's got these shocked looks on their faces, like, what? And that's basically how the episode ends. So Arian and Egg are related. And also, Egg is one of the two children that Makar, I forgot to mention that. Makar was not there, if you noticed. And the reason why Makar wasn't there is because he's looking for Darian and his other child who are missing, which of course is Egg, and he's not really missing. I thought this was the best episode. It definitely got things moving. And of course, the reveal at the end. If you're not familiar with the book, I pretty sure it might have been jarring for people to find out that Egg is a Targaryen. Yeah, I have very little complaints. I think this was almost a perfect episode. I mean, there is very little to complain about. This was just really great. It moved. You only got like 30 some odd minutes of runtime when you remove the previous and the credits at the end, plus the preview for next week. You're only talking about 30-minute episodes, but they're jam packed. They move. There's almost no wasted time in any of these episodes. So if you're interested in this medieval stuff, I highly recommend you check this out. It's really good. Completely different from anything else Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon like. It's completely different, and it's really enjoyable. Everybody's doing a great job acting. The continuity between Egg and Duncan is just fantastic. I got nothing but praise for this. And I'm going to wrap up my review here. So, like my father told me when I was 18 years old, get out.